Hi, Dr. Dave. Thank you so much for joining at I Elevate. I think my big question for you is what led you to your position that you're in now at the Frist Center, and why are you so passionate about it?
I don't think anybody could have planned to get where I'm at. Where I'm at is a lot of luck and happenstance and following my curiosity. It wasn't until my 30s I decided to give this college thing a try to see what that was all about. I was tired of hitting these these barriers to further advancement and stuff, where an employer says, I don't care how smart or capable you are, you're going to have some sort of degree to get any higher from where you're at right there. So I was like, all right, fine, I'll give this college thing a try. And it was in college that's where I discovered what science really was. I was raised in a very conservative evangelical community. So I was taught that scientists are kooky idiots who have no idea what they're doing and are just randomly making things up. And then I got to college and learned what the scientific method actually is and what it actually does. And I was like, wow, this is kind of like already what I'm doing naturally. How I look at the world, how I try to make sense of things. I can't really trust my instincts. My instincts are terrible. My emotions can go further than they should. I can feel more anxiety than what's appropriate in a situation or more fear than what's appropriate in a situation. So logic and critical thinking was the only way I could figure out what to do with my life, how to solve this problem in front of me. And so absolutely fell in love with science. Discovered physics, absolutely fell in love with physics. I started as an English major, and then after an astronomy 101 class, I switched to a math and science major. And then by the time I was working for my bachelor's, I went in physics and I was like, I'm going to be a physicist the rest of my life, and it's going to be awesome. And during this journey is also when I came to discover that I was autistic. And it was a shock to me to learn that my weirdness had a name and other people out there have the same sorts of struggles and challenges I have. But, like most autistic people, I fell down rabbit holes and I started studying everything I could learn about autism in an effort to try to understand myself better and understand other people better. Believe it or not, like understanding more about autism and how I differ from other people helped me to understand other people better. And understanding people has been a lifelong dream of mine, just to figure out why do they say and do all the bizarre things that they do. What is the algorithms in their equations? Why did that person say that? Why did that person think this is a good stance or this is a proper solution? Or why is this person ignoring the evidence and the conclusions right in front of them? This is something that's always fascinated me in an effort to understand them better. I had to discover that my weirdness had a name, and I make up about 3% of them, and learning more about myself. I also started to realize, if I had found this information sooner, like when I was a much younger person, it could have saved me years or perhaps even decades of toil and struggle of just trying to figure everything out myself. There
Mm.
was an answer to a lot of questions that were very important questions for me. And why was it? Why was it that I didn't have access? Why did I initially push back when it was suggested that I could be autistic? And I realized it was because there was a lot of misconceptions out there. And I'm very much the kind of person that I don't like shaking my fist at the sun when it rises every day. If there's something that I don't like, I either change it or do something to try to correct the situation, or I accept it for what it is and find a way to be okay with that and move on. And I became a self advocate because I realized that if people in our communities had more accurate conversations and understandings about autism and other types of neurodivergence and stuff, it would lead to fewer misconceptions, fewer jumping to conclusions, the kinds of things that are actually most severely impacting autistic people, but even to a lesser extent, other types of neurodivergence as well. So I became an open and vocal self advocate about autism and what it really looks like and how it affects us and ways that we could better work with each other or understand each other and communicate with each other. And I'm just doing that just sort of naturally on the side while I was earning my graduate degree in physics. It wasn't long before I realized each of my three kids were also on the autism spectrum, not necessarily the same part of the spectrum as myself. So this became about building for their future as well. And I guess I turned some heads. Some people made some notice of that because an hour after I received my degree to be an experimental physicist, and I was so excited that day. I had already imagined myself for the rest of my life being a physicist in some lab somewhere, doing some little experiments and stuff, and adding meaningful contributions, small but meaningful contributions to the scientific body, our knowledge, our understanding in the universe. That was going to be such a thrill for me and such a delight and a privilege for me because I was so grateful for all the things I was able to learn and understand from people who had come before me who put in all the work. They put 20 years of their life in, and it takes me a week to learn what it took them 20 years to figure out. And now I have that in me. To be able to pay that back was, I couldn't think of a life more worthy of devoting my time and energy to. But about an hour after I received my diploma, my boss came to me and said, I'm opening up a center to help autistic adults find meaningful employment, and I want you to be the director. Of course, I said yes. How could I not say yes to that? Because that had been a passion for mine at that point for many years. And the idea of doing that professionally, of course, I did mentally crap myself after I said yes, because I just spent a decade preparing to be a physicist. And then I get offered a job to do autism research. And I came back to him after I'd calmed down a bit and said, why do you want a physicist running this thing? He's like, he just laughed and he said, well, it's not so much important that you have a particular degree, other than you need to understand the scientific method. You need to understand how science works. That's what I need, a director who understands science, and I need a director who's passionate and knowledgeable about autism. And I was
Mm,
like, okay, yeah, I checked those two boxes. And so I jumped into it. And fortunately for me, being a director in a lot of ways is much easier than, I don't need a PhD in neuroscience. I don't need a PhD in psychology. I just need those people with those credentials on my team doing the heavy lifting that they get from their years and years of expertise and study. And then I get an unfair share of the credit. And so for the last 8 years, that's what I've been doing, is autism research. Specifically, we're looking for what is needed for autistic individuals to find and thrive in meaningful employment from a strengths-based approach. So that's my job, but my advocacy work now includes all of neurodivergence, all of disability, all of difference. The one size fits all is not serving us. And a lot of the tools that we build for autistic people, we have found they're also useful for people with ADD or ADHD or dyslexia. At the end of the day, if I design a tool that helps people find meaningful employment or thrive and be successful in meaningful employment, I don't care what your label is. I don't care what flavor of human being you are. If it's helpful for you and helps you get ahead, I want you to have access to it, and I want it to be of some use to you.
what a great story. Do you feel like your physics background still ever comes up or comes into play in your
Yeah, I
current
mean,
role?
I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this because it's almost like hubris. Being a physicist was very important to me. It was a key part of my identity, that I was like, oh, if I could be a physicist, if that could be part of my identity, part of myself, what an amazing thing that would be. Yeah, I just had so much respect for everything that physics has done to us, that it was very, very important to me as a milestone in my life journey. And then I get it and immediately go into an entirely different field of research. So I did have a bit of an identity crisis about that. At that point, for years, I had been working with like tutoring and mentoring like first year and second year grad students. I really struggled the first couple of years when I was through. I could have really used, I did get a lot of help. That's one of the reasons why I was able to make it through. But I could see where ways I could have gotten more help, and my ability to give that to the students is very rewarding, but it also keeps one of my toes dipped into the physics world. So I still use my physics degree if I'm helping people with electrodynamics or quantum mechanics. I was even offered the opportunity to do some physics research on the side, and I was very sorely tempted. But this problem of unemployment, underemployment with autistic people is a huge problem for a small percentage of the people. 3% of us are on the autism spectrum. If you're on the autism spectrum, there's an 80% probability that you're unemployed or underemployed, which is more severely impacted than any other disability or difference in the United States. That's a big problem that not enough people are working on. I could not sleep at night if I selfishly stole some of my time to kind of give to that. So all of my heart and soul is in the Frist Center's works and efforts professionally, and then a few hours here and there where I'm tutoring or helping people on the side. I sometimes have some regrets for that, but those regrets don't last more than a simple thought exercise. If I did that and a few more people weren't able to get their dreams realized or something, I feel like this is where I'm needed most. And so I really should devote all of my time and energies to this.
I spend a lot of my time thinking about science and God and the evolution of the world and where we're headed as a society. And I think that's what drives me so much to work with young people to uncover their talents because there's so much there that just combines everything, the whole life journey, right? And figuring out, okay, how can we make society more accessible and in a way where people can thrive? I mean, what's one thing right now you are concerned about for young people kind of coming out of college and finding a job? Like, are you finding that there's anything that's making a huge difference in attaining a job right now and seeing success there, or are you concerned about anything? What can we do differently?
A lot of our works and efforts is trying to build a future where we're better accommodated, we're better included into society. We're always working towards that dream, but when I'm working with individuals and trying to help them smart decisions or come up with strategies or access resources to either, like, if they're looking to find a job, to help in that search, or if they have a job but there's some conflict between them and other people within the workplace, how to better navigate that. Those are the tools I use for the world we live in today while we're trying to make a better world for tomorrow. For those young people today, I think right now, right this moment, the best strategy for them is to get better at self advocacy. And self advocacy does not mean walking up to your boss and saying, "You can't talk to me that way, I'm autistic." That's not really good self advocacy. In fact, I would argue that that's like the worst kind of advocacy that you can kind of do. When I say self advocacy, I mean, if you have a conflict or you're having an issue with somebody, communicating to them in a way that helps them to understand, look, our brains are a bit different in some ways. And so we use language differently. And what we have here is probably most likely miscommunication. You're misunderstanding me. I'm misunderstanding you. This is why I misunderstand you because I'm a very literal thinker. And your tone of voice and your inflection and all these things you're used to changing the meaning of words can sometimes get lost on me. And I need you to be more blunt and direct and just say it as plainly and directly as possible. And please avoid sarcasm and innuendos and wishy-washy languages. That's going to tremendously help me understand what you're actually trying to say. And if I come across as too rude or blunt or direct to you, please understand I don't mean that the way a normal person would. This is just how we talk. We're more blunt and direct because we're not as easily triggered by that as other people. Now, if I say or do something that feels disrespectful to you, by all means, call me out on it. Let's talk and figure out a way to make sure I don't do that again. But your assumption that I should know that is wrong. If I had known that, I wouldn't have said it that way. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
even if you think everybody I've ever met knows this. This is the most obvious thing in the world. Please keep in mind, it's obvious to you because of how your brain is wired. And if your
yeah.
brain was wired differently, like mine, the obvious is anything but.
Totally. Well, and especially in today's society, we really need conflict resolution and we need communication now more than ever. Challenging our own assumptions is at a core of how we can help resolve conflict, right? It's looking at yourself instead of pointing out what's wrong with the other person. That takes a lot of humility, but I completely agree with you. That is at the heart of self-advocacy because if you go into the workplace and you say, well, this is what I need and this is what I expect of you, that's the opposite of self-advocacy. We need to be teaching our young adults how to frame everything in an others-focused way so that we can still work together as a community, therefore help them highlight and their attributes. And that's a huge part too of what I believe, what I work on with my people. So, kind of shifting gears, you mentioned that you are the father of children who are also on the autism spectrum. Could you just speak to the process of being a parent for other parents out there listening who maybe, just received an autism diagnosis and don't know where to turn? Even though there's a plethora of resources out there, there's not always what speaks to the heart of that journey. So, if you just maybe could offer a few words of wisdom for them.
This is not going to exactly cast me in the best light, but the fact is, as we grow and we learn and evolve, there are some thoughts we held or some opinions or stances that we took that as we get a little older and wiser, we go, "Ooh, I can't believe I said that." But when I was 18 and joining the army, at that age, one of my goals in life is I wanted to be a father. I wanted to be a parent and I wanted to be raise kids. And one of my thoughts was that I could do a better job than my parents. I was so salty and angry about all the wrong ways that they raised me. I thought 80% of what they did was wrong. I was very salty about it. I had a long list of things that I thought that they did wrong. And I was like, I could do better than that. I want to raise my kids and I want my kids to not have the same kinds of problems that I had growing up. Now, when I got my autism diagnosis, I understood, oh gosh, it's not that they raised me wrong. They just raised me like a normal kid. And that method of raising didn't really work well. And they didn't have another method. When the normal ways weren't working, they had a lot of difficulty trying to pivot and stuff. I don't feel that today. I'm embarrassed that I ever felt that, but that kind of gives you the a little peek into how important being a parent was to me, even before I
Hmm.
was married, even before I had kids. I'm very much an eyes on the prize kind of guy. So when I had kids and I started raising them, like any parent before me in the history of ever discovered, oh, there's a lot more to this than I thought. It's a lot more complicated. And all of your ideals and stuff can go out the window as soon as you face the reality of, I know just how to handle X and X happens and you handle it the way you think you should. And it does not work at all the way you think it does. Fortunately for me, I was able to eventually pivot. And like I said, by nature, I'm an experimentalist. By nature, I'm a scientist. So I would have an idea, I would test it, and then I would see the results. And if the results were not what I thought they should be, I kept adjusting. My first kid, she was so sweet and so friendly and so delightful and so obedient that it's not fair that that was my first kid because it gave me an overinflated sense of how awesome of a parent I am. She was the type of child that at the age of 5, you could just hint at the fact that maybe she did something that wasn't appropriate or something that made you the least bit unhappy. And she would break into tears and say that she wanted to be a good girl. Like she had a very strong desire to be a good, dutiful daughter. That first kid, I was like, yeah, we could have another one. This is the easiest thing in the world. And then my second child was anything but that. And by the time my third child was about 8, I realized I could have a dozen kids and I would probably have to relearn how to be a dad with each and every one of them. Like
Mm.
each crafted strategy for each of my kid that worked the best was all but useless for the other two. I don't claim the title of being a good father in terms of like I'm scoring an A or a B on all the metrics and stuff until my kids were darn near grown up. Until my youngest was about 17 was when I was like, oh gosh, I think I finally got this unlocked, and they're all grown up. Like the mistakes I made up until then were monumental. But I will say, I was fortunate that I was able to diagnose them. My oldest was already a young adult by the time I got diagnosed, but my other two were like starting high school and in middle school. And my understanding of autism and my understanding about the particulars of why they're different and what sorts of accommodations are out there helped us to have conversations. As I was learning how to advocate for myself, I was also teaching my kids how to advocate for themselves. And now, like my daughter, she graduated high school at the same time as her older brother because she couldn't get out of high school enough. She went to college. She's in the May getting a bachelor's degree in physics, and she's going to be in the fall at Vanderbilt University working on a PhD in physics. I did
Oh,
not
look at that.
I did not pressure her to do that. It's just she's wired similar enough to me that the same things that spoke to me spoke to her. And so, yeah,
That's
I'm
really
very proud. She's successfully adulting. I think everybody could argue she's successfully adulting. My son is in the Air Force. He's been in the Air Force for a few years now. He works on the electrical systems of vehicles. And my oldest lives with her boyfriend in Arkansas. So they're all three successfully adulting. They all three had different challenges, different hurdles to overcome. Some of them, the challenges were monumental, while for others, that same challenge was not really a challenge at all. So they each had their own unique journey, but they also had significant barriers to success. A significant barrier. I mean, they're autistic adults. One of them is ASD level 2. And so the fact that they're all like successfully adulting and stuff, this is probably 80% of the reason why I'm grinning most of the time is I realize that they kind of beat the odds. I mean, that's a personal reason why I'm glad that I got into this work and I'm glad that I kind of studied because I could use this for my own kids, my knowledge
yeah.
and understanding. Our goal is to try to make my kids less rare, try to make me less rare. There's a
Yeah.
lot of untapped talent and potential out there that's going to waste because we're not doing what we should as a society.
Thanks for sharing all that. Back to the professional side at Frist. What's a couple of things you are focused on with the Frist Center this year? And how can we get involved or talk with parents more about what's going on at Frist? Obviously, we spotlight you in our newsletters and are really very appreciative of the partnership and have enjoyed working with your center over the past couple of years. What's on the agenda this year?
The Frist Center for Autism and Innovation is extraordinarily fortunate in that we got some big donor interest in our early years. The first couple of years, we were just a TIPS funded initiative. We weren't even a center, but that we received a very generous endowment that basically made the Frist Center for Autism and Innovation a permanent thing. There's nothing there's nothing this administration can do short of blowing up our entire economy that can directly impact the Frist Center itself. So even if they yank all the funding, even if they shut down science entirely from a government perspective, we'll still be able to exist. We'll still be able to do what we're doing. We were doing a lot of great things with the grant stuff that, like the Autism Summer Internship, which we've been holding. I first started that program in 2019. Our first three interns that we had, these are undergraduate students who are autistic or neurodivergent and need to work on their soft skills, need to figure out a strategy for success. Just the other week, one of those interns, I was at his dissertation defense, and he is now has a PhD in physics. And so
Amazing.
we were really excited because this was our first intern that was going to make it all the way to a PhD and stuff. So we're really excited about that. But sadly, we had to cancel our autism summer internship program this year because, like most research experience programs throughout the country, where you take a STEM undergraduate student and you send them to another university and they get embedded in a real life lab and they do real life research where they're putting what they were learning in the classroom to practice. It's a very critical junction to the future of our future scientists. For me, that was the time when I first discovered, oh, the stuff I've been learning in class, this is how I can use it in the lab. And this is what it would be like to be an experimental physicist doing this kind of research. And oh my God, I love this so much. I can't believe you get paid to do something like this. I was kind of lukewarm about physics until I did a summer internship. And then I was red hot, and I've been red hot ever since. It's a crucial stepping stone on the pathway to science. I'm confident it's not just going to go away. It's just too critical. It's one of the smartest, most productive uses of taxpayer dollars in the sciences and stuff. But unfortunately, it was nixed in such a way that we didn't have a time to look for a plan B or anything like that. It was just the rug was yanked out of us at the ninth hour. So we had to cancel the autism summer internship for this year. And I'm pretty bummed about that. But we're looking for alternatives. And I have no doubt that it's going to be in some form next year. There's a non-zero probability it might be in a small, modest form this year. We're still scrambling to kind of make things happen. But what are we definitely working on, and what are we moving on full steam ahead? The driving simulator that was created to teach autistic folks how to drive by our deputy director, Nilanjan Sakar. This is a project he's been working on for many, many years. We are at the far back end of the research and development. We're actually in phase two of the commercialization development. And that is the part where you take something that you've tested and demonstrated in the lab. This solves problems. This is to what degree it solves problems and the ways that it solves problems. This is meeting an unmet need. A question a lot of scientists don't often do enough time or effort into is, okay, now how do I get it in the hands of people? A commercialization phase of the research is needed for that. We have been over the past year testing this driving simulator coupled with a close partner of ours, just so happened to do a lot of research on how do you do a curriculum that teaches how to drive for autistic folks. So we took
Mm,
their
that's
curriculum and
amazing.
our driving simulator and merged them together into a project that I think we're currently calling Sandy. It's on our website. You can find the details about it there. So we're at the tail end of that. The cuts almost hurt that too, almost
Mm.
canceled that far. But luckily for us, we were so close to the end that we're now limping over the finish line with what we've got. So the hope is in the next year or two, you're going to start seeing that driving simulator prop up everywhere. And I got to tell you, at the Frist Center, the number one question I get from parents and individuals is, how do I access that driving simulator? I need that for my kids, or I need that for myself. How do I access that? And I'm going to be so delighted to be able to just point them to places where they can access that themselves. So it's at that phase where it's moving out of the lab and into our society. So that's really exciting work that has been, there's a lot of people that have been looking forward to that for years. So I'm really excited about that. It's a huge unmet need.
I get asked about that all the time. Driving is such a, and transportation barriers to work.
Absolutely. So that's one that I'm really excited about. Another project that I'm really excited about that you're actually involved with yourself is we're getting together experts who specialize on job coaching and career counseling for autistic individuals. And what we're trying to do is distill sort of like a playbook or tips and tricks or a user guide or something. Because one of the most common complaints I get from autistic individuals who reach out to us is I need help getting employment or I need help succeeding in employment. And when you talk to people who go to a job coach to help them, they find at best those job coaches are of no value. They don't help them. And at worst, they seem to do more harm than good. And I personally do not blame the job coaches for that because they have a toolkit that they designed for the neuromajority, that one size fits all. And for maybe 97% of the population, this toolkit works pretty well. So that's what they use. That's what they're used to. That's what works for them. And then an autistic client comes along and says, yeah, I don't need any of those tools. Those tools are not helping me with anything I need. Here are my sets of problems and issues. And then the expert is like, I don't have any tools for those. And so now you have this awkward situation where someone is supposed to be the expert, supposed to be able to help you to find or thrive in meaningful employment, and they don't understand the first thing about you or how to help you. So they make assumptions, they make false equivalencies, and now they're like causing problems rather than solving them. So one of the things I'm really hopeful for this toolkit that we're going to design is I want to get it out there in the cosmos. I want job coaches at some point in the future, if they're like, ooh, this guy I'm trying to help is autistic. I don't even know anything about that. Maybe a Google search or something will access this toolkit and then they have some best practices. The craziest thing about accommodating or including autistic talent into the workplace is it's not nearly as hard or complicated as most people think. It's actually super easy, super simple. There's just a few things that you need to understand to be able to effectively communicate and work with someone whose neurotype is different than yours, which is not all of us see the world the same way. Not all of us experience things in the same way. Some of us are missing things that the other people, it's as obvious as the nose on their face. Perceptions differ and the way we use language differs. And
Mm.
so stop making so many assumptions that everybody sees the world the way you do. Everybody uses language the way you do. And when someone says something weird or off, or, and you're like, I would never say that, or I would never say that in that way, use that moment to realize, this person's neurotype might be a little bit different than mine. There might be a little bit of miscommunication happening here. So let me
Right.
give this person the benefit of the doubt. Let me ask some more qualifying questions. Let me stop making so many assumptions and try to work with this person. Those are the workplace environments that somebody like me thrives in. One of the key reasons why I've been so successful as a scientist, so successful in my work at the Frist Center for Autism and Innovation is because I am well accommodated. I am well integrated into the system. I have my needs met. People know how to talk to me. People know not to jump to conclusions and to ask qualifying questions and stuff. And so, because of that, I am about as well integrated into a workforce as a human being can be. And it wasn't that hard. The reason why it's not happening in most instances is simply due to ignorance. People don't know what they don't know. And those assumptions do not serve them well when they're dealing with somebody of a different neurotype.
But what's worse is I feel as though a lot of businesses don't care. And that is what needs to change because, first of all, there's already research that shows that the cost of onboarding and hiring somebody, retaining that employee and helping them grow and move up in the workplace is to the advantage of the business and the employer, anyways. But
Exactly.
then, it's a matter of putting people first. That is something I've witnessed, as a major issue. And then there's entrenched systems sometimes at play in the culture of workplaces. And they say they want to change, and then do they really? But if they did, imagine the difference they could make, or scale their innovations faster, or just have a better culture. People want to stay. If you want to stay and you want to keep going, that's when you start to really hit and untap new discoveries and talents. So retaining employees is something that for the life of me, I wouldn't understand why more people wouldn't want to put more emphasis on that. And I think it's really a leadership issue. They need to look at themselves and say, well, how did I get to this position? We have a lot of leadership sometimes gets up there and they're unhealed. And so it's like, and that's the therapy part of me that I really enjoy working with people and understanding their stigma background or their trauma background and then how that influences them. And even though I'm not a mental health counselor and I'm an occupational therapist and a coach, there's a lot of action steps we can take to help with that. Awesome conversation today. Thank you so much for your time. I'm excited to see more about the driving simulator and to maybe even join forces with that as an OT and help spreading the word with that. And of course, really privileged and honored to be part of the project to advance other coaches. I know there's no perfect way of doing anything. So I would be remiss in saying that I haven't had my own conversations with myself and my interactions, my therapeutic interactions with my clients and analyzing, is this helping? Is this hurting? If you're out there coaching, we all need to be doing that self-reflective work and growth.
One thing I want to let your audience know is if you know anybody who's autistic or neurodivergent or suspects they're autistic or neurodivergent or are struggling like dealing with a coworker or a subordinate or superior who you suspect is autistic and neurodivergent and you're like, I need some help. I need to talk to somebody who understands these things to kind of help. You can consider the Frist Center for Autism and Innovation as a resource. We can and do talk to members of the public all the time. For me, that's one of the perks of this job is to talk to individuals and figure out their own individual story. And I consider that is one of the reasons why we're as effective as we are. Because if I can help you solve a neurodivergent related problem that doesn't just help you, that potentially lays out a blueprint for other people like you that have similar issues. And I can tell you at this point, I've interviewed probably over 800 autistic individuals, and I'm at a point now where it's just subtle variations of the same thing over and over and over again. And
Right.
that's exciting for me because that shows that solutions could be very scalable. We're well compensated just by learning about you. And if we can help you in return, then we're happy to pay that back. So, yeah, if you don't know where to go next or you don't know who to talk to next, you're welcome to talk to us and we'll be happy to do what we can to help.
All right. Thank you. Have an awesome day.
Yeah, you too.